on October the 23rd or the 25th here in Glendale, Arizona at the Glendale Civic Center for the most magical market on the land, the Witch Crafted Market. You can find me and all of my spiritual and medicinal tools on the 25th. So make sure that you guys go over to Witch Crafted here on Instagram and grab your tickets. They're only $5, and that $5 is going to give you a host of the most magical beings that you may be able to find here in Arizona. Okay?
Anything in my name in the way I tell you, and he says, I will do it. John 14:14. Watch, we're going to have some mystical stuff here. What did he say? Ask anything in my name, in meditation, the way I tell you, and I will do it. And how can he do it? Because he said that the Father would do it. What is the Father's name? If you go to the book of Exodus, and in the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 13, you'll see that Moses was in the desert. You know what that means? What does desert mean? Desert means confusion. Moses was in confusion.
Moses and the Israelites walked in this wilderness for 40 years. 40 symbolically, if we look at the symbolism of how it translates in the Kabbalah, 40 translates into meaning demonstration. It translates into meaning demonstration, which is the action or process of showing the existence or truth of something by giving proof of the evidence. I'm going to read that again. So these 40 years, right? 40 not being a specific number, was all speaking in allegory. So these 40 years that source had Moses and the Israelites journeying through the wilderness of Mount Sinai, what was really happening was Spirit taking them through the action or the process of proofing their existence, or proofing the existence of the Creator that they believed in at the time, or proofing their experience. During this journey or story of Moses, Moses will go on to put together a large army consisting of 603,550 million, which reduces Kabbalistically into the number 1, which signifies new beginnings. Okay? So the story of the army of Moses is really alerting us to the physical and spiritual journey that we as human beings are embarking on, that is making us anew, that is taking us from demonstration to rebirth. Okay? Of you bringing into harmony your lower man, the lower aspect of you, and the higher aspects of your nature.
It means he's confused. He doesn't know which way to turn. All of these words are symbolic. That's the way the Easterners wrote the Bible. Okay? So he goes up to the mountain. That's what Jesus is talking about. That's the higher consciousness, the Father. The higher consciousness is the mountain. Okay? He sees a bush. The bush is that which is attached to the earth. That means in the center of his carnal mind. That which is attached to the earth is the carnal mind. That's the human mind that you and I use. And in the midst of that bush, he sees a fire. Fire means spirit.
We find the exalted place in mind that the mountains call Sinai. So here we see the children of Israel go through the first journey of finding their way through the wilderness of Sinai, which is their thoughts or their high thoughts, their consciousness coming into an exalted place or coming into an exalted state. The second part of their migration to and living in the wilderness of Paran. So the second part of their journey consisted of them going into the land of Paran. When we look metaphysically at Paran, it translates into the multitude of unseemly, confused, and undisciplined thoughts of the subconscious mind. So as we go into the As we go into as the Israelites took on the journey of Mount Sinai in the wilderness, here we see Spirit bringing our consciousness into a high state of exalted thoughts. And through going through this stage of high exalted thoughts, it brings us into the realm of the Paran, which has us going through the multitudes of seemingly confused and undisciplined thoughts that exist within the subconscious mind in order for us to bring them into harmony and for us to bring them into order. And so after the Israelites leaves the wilderness of Paran, finally they end their arrival at Moab. Moab metaphysically translates into meaning the seed of the Father or flowing from the Father. Okay? It goes on to say that Ruth, who represents the love of the natural soul of God and from whom David and Jesus were descended, was a Moabitess. So here we see when the Israelites land and come into the land of Moab, we see the final climax of their journey or of their ascension. And here we see them take on the mind of Moab, or coming into the seat of the Father, or coming to the center of the Father, or coming into relationship with the Father. Moab represents the body and the most external conditions of life. Okay, this is something good, and at least it was something good, right? And studying the external conditions of life. So really understanding the conditions of how you operate, understanding the conditions of your experience, understanding the conditions of the world that we live in, understanding the conditions of your mind. So here we see the Israelites end their journey and the state of really understanding their conditions. And through understanding their conditions, they ascend from out of the land of Moab, and they ascend into a Moabitess.
It is an ecclesial tradition, okay, that was really formed as a theological response to cultural legalism. Cultural legalism says that you cannot be made right with God unless you become one of us culturally.
Black churches began because white Christians in America would not honor the Imago Dei in black people.
Blacks, especially during the period in which they were enslaved, were actually considered second-class citizens even in the church. They could not come to the Lord's table on an equal basis. They could not, in many cases, they couldn't even be baptized, okay?
Myth means to speak. So many African oral traditions that were passed down to the younger generations were also annexed and appropriated by the Greeks and then by the Romans, but even before that, by the Hindus of India. These original stories became myth or folklore, and the folklore became fantasy. Heru is a very powerful Kemetic deity, also represented as Shango, the most powerful and feared of the Loas in Voodoo. And Heru, the most important deity of the Avian gods, designated to govern the sky and the sun and preside over Lower Egypt, represented by the Christ energy. The Christian community, as other religious communities before it, repackaged the ancient stories and then sold them to the modern world as angels, and in some cases even demons and demigods. But what they failed to tell you were where these stories actually came from.
Resulting from this trend over time, when modern-day comics were made, the stories were of white heroes who saved white people and especially white women from villains who were either darker in complexion or wore darker clothing to symbolize saving white innocents from the dangers of a dark menace. By this time, the audience is completely unaware that the characteristics and symbols of the new heroes map back to those in the stories originally told in Africa.
Christianity and Islam by nature, they are bullies of African culture. It is expressed in their intolerance of other people who believe differently from who they are. So here's a simple example. If a Muslim walks into this village, the first object is to build a mosque and make everyone in that village a Muslim. It changes your timetable of waking up. You wake up at 5, changes your fashion, changes the way you bury your loved ones. Now you must do everything according to Islamic law. The same thing is true with Christianity. Christianity walks into a space, first thing they want to do, as a Zulu, as a Xhosa, you take off your shirt and put on your beautiful beads. Hebrew beads, by the way, which are Jewish. You put on your Hebrew gear, which is traditional, and you walk up to church. Christianity will look at you, though now there's a bit of tolerance, but the first glance is unacceptable. Because the God that Christianity has does not have tolerance for culture. Does not. Rather, I would rather take off that thing, put on your shirt, put a tie on you, put a jacket, polish some shoes, and say, now you look nice. Because apparently you must become European first before you can become Christian. In order for God to accept you, He cannot accept you in your authenticity. He needs first to take you through the culture of the dominant culture, which is the colonial culture, before you can actually become an acceptable Christian.
Maponga lays it bare. Christianity and Islam are not passive faiths. They are bullies of African culture. You see it in their intolerance. A Muslim enters a village, the first mission is not harmony, it's domination.
On October the 23rd or the 25th here in Glendale, Arizona at the Glendale Civic Center for the most magical market on the land, the Witch Crafted Market. You can find me and all of my spiritual and medicinal tools on the 25th. So make sure that you guys go over to Witch Crafted here on Instagram and grab your tickets. They're only $5, and that $5 is going to give you a host of the most magical beings that you may be able to find here in Arizona. Okay.